Welcome to episode 36 of Refining Rhetoric. I'm your host, Robert Bortons. We have another Jennifer for the show today. This is Dr. Jennifer Murff. She is the CEO of the MENA Leadership Center, and she talks about the impact they're having on the Middle East and North Africa and why it's so important, as well as sharing a little bit about her homeschool journey. So be sure to listen to the whole episode. You won't want to miss a minute of it. And we'll wrap up with the 15 tools of learning and our segment on crypto. So let's jump in.
Classical Conversation Studios presents Refining Rhetoric with CEO Robert Bortons, a podcast where faith, business, politics, and classical education meet. Join us as we use the classical tools of rhetoric to seek truth in every arena of life.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Refining Rhetoric. Today, my guest is Dr. Jennifer Murff. Jen is a president and CEO of MENA, Middle East North Africa Leadership Center, an organization that seeks to expand the capacity of Christian leaders through the MENA region by providing the tools that are essential to the expansion and acceleration of the gospel. She's also an adjunct professor at Regent University and at the King's University, where she teaches organizational leadership at the graduate level. She holds an MA in the organizational leadership and a doctorate in strategic leadership from Regent University. And Dr. Murff and her husband also homeschool their 4 daughters, and I believe with classical conversations for at least some of the time.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys are doing it when you're over in North Africa or not.
The only consistency is you guys.
Okay, awesome. Well, Jen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Robert.
Well, as I said in the pre-show, we are seeking truth in our lives. I mean, I think that's one of the things for our mission at Classical Conversations, to know God and to make him known, is really seeking truth. And of course, in our modern culture, truth has come to mean many things, and we like to be grounded. So how do you define truth? How do you think of it?
So whenever I was just getting married, my husband and I served in a ministry that had a scholar on staff. His name was Carl Raschke, and he focused on postmodernism. That was his scholarly point of view as far as what he wanted to always talk about. But one of the things that postmodernism believes is that there's no absolute truth, none whatsoever.
Right.
And you can't actually have no absolute truth and believe in Jesus and have a Christian worldview. And so one of the things that I genuinely believe that the Bible says is that truth is not fluid, and God says who he says he is. And so that would be my example.
I love it. Yeah, it is. It's always mind-boggling to me that we send our children to education centers that don't believe truth can exist. So I'm not sure what they're educating them on. And we might be seeing the result of that in our culture today. That's just a side note.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I even had a friend, their child was drug in by the sexual identity conversation. I mean, they don't even know who they are. I'm like, they're 8 years old. Like, this is ridiculous, so it's so prevalent in society.
Well, thank you for helping us stay grounded in the truth. Now, what is the MENA Leadership Center, and how did it get started, and how did you join?
So the MENA Leadership Center, it's Middle East, North Africa. And many people don't even know a lot about the Middle East. We think it's, falafels and Israel and camels, but we don't quite have a deep understanding of the impact and the influence that the Middle East has had, not just on our society, but the world as a whole. I mean, if you think about it, the Garden of Eden was in Iraq.
Yeah.
Jesus was obviously born in Israel and fled as a refugee to Egypt. You have Paul was from Turkey. You have Mark, the writer Mark, was from Libya.
Okay.
So we see a lot of things throughout Scripture that we lean very heavily on coming from North Africa, Turkey, and the Middle East at large.
So how long has MENA been around?
So we started in 2019, of course, right before COVID. And so God was so faithful to provide everything that we needed. And our focus is really to make fishers of men. And we work with already existing ministries throughout the region of high impact. Every ministries like the Bible societies. RZIM was one of them before their struggles. But we worked with ministries to help get them ready so that they can be able to launch into success or to build a stronger organization. So far, we've trained about 871 ministry leaders from 271 ministries.
Wow. I know maybe more than the average American about the MENA area, but I don't think it's probably not a place where Christianity is welcomed with open arms, I can imagine.
No, and even the countries that are more open is still closed. And we work in English, Arabic, we work in Farsi, we work in Urdu. But you'd be very surprised how thriving the church is and what God's doing in the region. Leaders are springing up like crazy. I was in a conversation a couple of days ago with a gentleman out of Iraq, and he came from a Muslim background, and he started an online church because he wasn't able to have a physical location.
Right.
And, the police are beating on his door. He's getting his life threatened, and he's unrelentless. He is just so passionate about seeing the gospel spread. And I feel like, oh my gosh, I have so much to learn. If I could only be like you, So
Yeah.
God is doing incredible things. It puts us to shame a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a persecuted church seems to be a growing church, and sometimes it seems like many churches here in the United States, they shun persecution or do what they can to not be persecuted versus standing up for the truth. And thank God that we have our freedoms and we don't have to worry about the police beating down our doors here. But it is great to hear those stories and be reminded that this freedom that we have isn't universal yet.
That's right.
But I know that that's something that many organizations are working on. Jen, can you tell us a little bit about how are you really achieving your mission? You said providing the tools that are essential to the expansion and acceleration of the gospel. So what does that materially look like?
So the believers in the Middle East are some of the most bold and brave people you'll ever meet in your life. They're not in hiding. They're very out there doing ministry, but there are a lot of challenges. So we provide courses, everything from strategic planning to human resource management, digital church, advanced religious freedom. So we have one of our professors is actually one of the human rights lawyers and advocates at the UN.
Mm.
And so we bring in the best of the best, and God's just using them to equip the church. I think that the Western church forgot about the Middle East. I think we were very consumed with making sure that we built the best mega church. And they've been doing church with everything inside of them in excellence, but they needed some help. And so that's where the center comes in. So we ask them questions like, what do you need? How can we help serve you? My biggest fear was I was going to step into the Middle East thinking that I had something, like I could teach them something.
Right.
As if, I knew exactly what they were going through. So we put on our listening ears, like we tell kids. We put on our listening ears so that we can hear from the people and then meet their needs in a tangible way.
That's beautiful. I know you've helped out thousands and thousands of people directly and indirectly. Dr. Murff, I've known you for a while, and your entire career is centered around the theme of leadership. And so before becoming the CEO of MENA Leadership Center, you received a master's in organizational leadership and a PhD in strategic leadership, and you teach courses on these at the university. So how did you come across this theme of leadership in your life?
Whenever I was in high school, our church really focused on leadership, and I just thought, man, leadership is really important. But reading a John Maxwell book doesn't actually help you become necessarily a great leader. It's really rubbing shoulders with great leaders and seeing their mistakes and seeing their successes and learning from both the good and the bad. And so I fell in love with this idea of how can I love God with everything inside of me and lead in excellence, and even lead in excellence even after I've messed up.
Mm-hmm.
And so it helped me just kind of rethink leadership. And it brought me here where I am today.
Yeah, so much of leadership is humility, I believe, in raising your hand when you did mess up. Because if we can't do that as leaders, then how can we expect others to do that as well?
Yes.
So you mentioned John Maxwell, who's I read a lot of his material and love him. Is there any other people you admire in this space, or feel like you've if they release something new, you got to pick it up right away?
So, a mentor of mine, her name is Dr. Kathleen Patterson. She is the leading scholar on servant leadership. Her and Greenleaf are actually the leading scholars. And she's like the protege of him.
Mm.
And she just gave me a beautiful picture of really what servant leadership is. And she's actually the chair of our board. She was a professor of mine, and I stalked her. I wouldn't let her get away from me, Robert. I was like, I'm going to learn everything I can from this woman.
That's great.
But she wasn't afraid to tell me her struggles. She wasn't afraid to tell me where she messed up. And then she was okay with telling me her successes. And I think that we do injustice when we don't do all, like both of those, both our successes and our failures, because we are going to fail and we are going to have successes. So it's just being able to balance that. And yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, one of the things that I've admired you all for is your homeschooling parents, and you've managed to both be able to love your children and be able to give to a wider audience through career. So tell me how you balance all that, because oftentimes, we always hear the thing, well, I can't homeschool my kids because I can't work. But you're just one of many examples where that's just not accurate.
Well, I remember thinking that people that did do that were absolutely crazy.
Maybe.
However, when I started homeschooling, when my oldest daughter, she's 14, when she was 4 years old, we started with Cece. And I don't know if I even bought into it then, but I made some really good friends. And this is where community comes in. This is what Cece, I think, does almost the best I've ever experienced. And I've moved all kinds of places.
Yeah.
Community is vital. And I was able to really connect and make friends because of Cece, as well as become like so smart. And I can sing every timeline song. And,
I'm not there yet, so we won't have a competition today.
Soon and very soon. That's about, I didn't really have homeschooling in mind. But then whenever my daughter was getting ready to start school, I think I got a little afraid. And I thought it was fear-based. I'm not saying that's a good decision, a good choice to make when homeschooling. But maybe it was, because I am where I am from that. But I had to kind of figure it out. And Cece played a huge role in it. But I made some of my closest friends, mostly the military community, to be honest, because I live in Virginia and in the Hampton Roads area, which is like the largest naval base in the country is here. So Cece played a huge role in homeschooling and me getting started.
That's wonderful. You mentioned earlier that it's actually been a stabilizing force, because I imagine that you're traveling, working remotely as well. And we'll talk about another challenge you've had in a few minutes. But how has Classical Conversations helped you homeschool through the ups and downs and the challenges of life?
So whenever I first started homeschooling, I did it all on my own. I do this talk called Ditch, Delegate, and Draw the Line. That we don't have to do it all as parents, that we can outsource things. You have the choice to be able to provide great education, the education and the curriculum that you choose with the person you choose. You can even like sit and watch, like you can do everything, but you can choose everything and you can outsource things. And being a working homeschool mom, if I didn't outsource things, I would have had to choose a different route. So homeschooling made it possible to do something that everyone told me I couldn't do, but I did do. So right now, everyone's doing CC. I only homeschool personally 100% my youngest because it's fun to do first grade. Let's be honest, but the other girls, They love their tutors. Their tutors were homeschool CC moms themselves that, you know, you literally did CC from the time their kids were graduating, I mean, in kindergarten to graduating. And so they're able to take their expertise and bring it into my home. And it's safe and I trust them. And they're like, they're kicking butt. They're just doing a fantastic job. And I'm so proud.
Mm. Well, I love you give that vision for alternative ways that maybe an individual who might not think about. And I've listened to your talk at least once, and a lot of what you've said resonated. Is like, don't think of homeschooling, especially because when I listen to it, is to homeschool leaders. Like, don't expect our generation's home education to look necessarily like yours. And I really appreciate that.
You have to think that we're in a generation that has tons of student debt. So they have to work, but they don't want to sacrifice their family at the altar of it. And so they have to be creative. And this is where community does come in. This is something that is very different about CC than other places, is that you really do get community and rigorous education, especially when they get in the challenge years. My goodness, I wish that I would have had the education that my daughter gets. It's incredible. She feels challenged. I mean, she does schoolwork all day in the sense of like it's because she's challenged, but I didn't do schoolwork like that. I didn't learn the things that she's learning. And so it's encouraging to see my daughters, because I have 4 daughters. My husband's a ladies' man. We're all girls surrounded him, but CC is a wonderful curriculum, especially for high schoolers in particular. I mean, all of it's good.
So straight from the doctor's mouth. So
that's well, funny.
What have you done? You do leadership for the Middle East, North Africa, and you specialize in that. Is there anything you do for your children to develop leadership skills in them as they've gotten older?
Yes. Of course, I let them start businesses. And listen, let's be honest, it is time consuming and it is hard to let your kids step into any type of entrepreneurship. However, it is so worth it. I let my kids get involved in politics, and that can be nerve-wracking. My daughter went to a protest in Washington, D.C. a month and a half ago. I was a little nervous, but she felt so excited, along with my husband, to be able to stand for righteousness and do what God's called her to do. And I put the responsibility of following hard after God on her, knowing that you can do this. You're not too young. So I don't think that I would have even known to do that if it wasn't for seeing other homeschool parents just encouraging the kids to step into their purpose.
Do you have any material recommendation books or other organizations that have helped or have you guided your family to as they've grown?
We haven't done this yet, but I would really like my daughter to do something with Generation Joshua.
Yeah, they're a great organization.
I do think that they do a really great job in their youth program. And now, I mean, we take our kids to work and things like that. So they get to be part of that. That's what we've done so far, because the kids are some of them are still small and we're just stepping into those teenage years. But
that's wonderful. Well, I'm sure they see the impact of the work that you all are doing and the people that you are encouraging. Now, wanted to get a little personal, if you don't mind. You've recently had a surgery, and I was wondering if you could just share some of the challenges that you've been facing and maybe like how your church or your local community has hopefully rallied around you and supported you during this time.
Yes. So last year I was in Sweden and I was doing a big conference with all of our ministry partners and then Mina. And I started getting these really bad headaches, excruciating. But I tried to push through it. I didn't want to be a whiner and I didn't want to miss out on anything, the fear of missing out, like FOMO. So I just kept pushing. And then on the way home, I told my husband, I said, something's not right. And he says, then we need to take you to the hospital. So he took me right to the hospital from the plane. And they found a mass in my brain called an arteriovenous malformation. And I was scared out of my mind, just to be honest. It was actually, I went to the hospital at Harvard's hospital, and it was one of the largest AVMs they had ever treated. What should have been a few weeks in and out of the hospital, it was 3 months. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to speak again. I had to learn how to lift my arms. I had to relearn everything. And it was one of those moments that you just feel like, God, what are you doing? Why? But he was so faithful, even in the midst of everything. So my kids have got to see a lot of grit.
Yeah.
You know, mama goes and walks every day because I can, by the way. I don't like exercising. It's never been my BFF. However, I wake up every morning thinking, what if I can't walk again, ever? So I'm going to walk. I don't run.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be a runner, guys. I know you do. What sport do you play?
I used to play rugby, but I'm on your team. No running now for
Okay.
me.
Okay.
Except for the fridge, maybe to the fridge.
That's my joke. I usually tell that joke. I ran to the fridge and away from bad guys. So the AVM kind of shook our world a little bit, but God was faithful. And what was so amazing is I was fairly new to this community when I found out about the AVM. And Robert, they came alongside of me as if they knew me. They didn't know me. And they're still providing meals. They're still doing things.
Wow.
One of the moms, there's 2 moms. One was a physical therapist and one was an occupational therapist. And my insurance wouldn't cover anything, but no one didn't know it. Like they wouldn't cover the aftercare once I got home. After I finished all the therapy inpatient, then I did some outpatient. And these 2 moms did not know me from Adam. And they said, can we help you? And so they come over 2 to 3 days a week to provide like help for me. I can lift my arm now. I can do things that I couldn't do before. And so God uses community. We think that we're just there to learn and to maybe we do a lot of fun things at our community. You know, we do like mom's night out. They do dad's night out. They do all kinds of fun things. But to see how they just met a need without knowing me was really special. And I'm very proud to be part of our community.
Well, that makes me feel good, being trying to serve everyone here in the United States and really providing that. God told us not to bear, that we didn't need to bear things alone. That a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken, and I think your story is a testament to that. What's the next steps? Like, what's the recovery process? Because when we had scheduled the interview, and then I didn't know if we were actually going to be able to get together today because I just didn't have all the details. But what's it look like going forward for you?
So I do have a surgery coming up in May, and that is to give me. I have some things that they took out of my bone plate, like my skull cap. I don't have a skull cap. And so they're going to put a prosthetic one in. So that's one of those things where it's cosmetic. I'd rather them put a little bit more height on me. If they're going to do something cosmetic, I'd like to choose what I get. However, getting a skull cap is great. That will protect my head better. And but God really has protected me through a lot.
It's been great to be able to follow your story on social media, and of course, still see the work that your husband's doing and the organization's doing. God's work is always fulfilled, and sometimes we can wonder, why, Lord? Hey, there's all these things that I'm trying to work on to make your kingdom here on earth and do what you've told me to do, and this seems to be a distraction from that. But it's just been a joy to see how you've responded and grown and. Through all this, and I'm sure it's challenging and all of those things. So I just want you to know that I've appreciated watching from afar. And of course, we pray for you and your family. Well, thank you so much for joining us. How do we get a hold of you? If we want to support MENA or learn more about the work that you're doing there, can you point us to a website or some social media for us to connect with you and your organization?
Absolutely. Our website is MENA, MENA, leadershipcenter.com. And then you can also find us on social media, both on Instagram and Facebook, and just MENA Leadership Center.
Well, Dr. Murff is a leader of leaders. She's a homeschool mom. She's battling right now. And of course, we're praying for you, but it's just such a joy for you to be on with us today. And thank you. And be sure to go check out the MENA Leadership Center and all the good work they're doing, and to continue to pray for the Middle East, because our Christian brothers and sisters there need our support.
Thank you.
It was great catching up with Dr. Murff. It's been a while since I talked to her. Next, we're going to practice our 15 tools of learning together. And we're pulling from an article from CNN on early February. Biden says U.S.-China relations have not taken a hit in wake of spy balloon shoot down. Now, as you know, there was a balloon that China set up, and it managed to float across our entire country. The Biden administration and the military were aware of it. They tried to keep it under wraps. And then I think when it was crossing over Montana, some people in Montana spotted it. And that's when we found out what it was. It then proceeded to continue to float over North Carolina, which is where we're located. And it was shot down, not by a redneck, but by a military Air Force vehicle after it floated over the ocean. And so we're going to practice our 15 tools of learning together and explore this a little bit deeper. And in the 5 core habits of grammar, we'll talk about storytelling. And I grew up being a huge Star Wars fan. And in the episode 5, which is the second one they created, which is, of course, The Empire Strikes Back in Hoth at the beginning of the movie on the ice planet, the Empire sends a spy droid to figure out across the galaxy to try to find where the Rebel Alliance is located. Han and Chewie go and shoot the spy droid right after, well, they try to shoot it, but it self-destructs. And of course, it self-destructs right after it transmits all the data that the Empire needs back to the ship. And so shooting down the balloon after it crosses over the United States, in my mind, is very similar to the droid self-destructing after it transmits everything that it needed to do. So very interesting. So storytelling, of course, that could also be comparison as well. But anyways, let's talk about the 5 common topics of dialectic and circumstances. In this article, Joe Biden touts that 600 U.S. companies have pulled out of Russia, are no longer doing business in Russia because he's trying to compare the China and Russia relationship. Something that he does not put in, and of course, I do not know the details of all 600 of these U.S. companies and how they have pulled out of Russia. But I do know that some of them, at least, have sold their companies to the country of Russia and have done so with the option to buy their company back from Russia for $1. So it really isn't that they're, in my opinion, actually left Russia. They're only doing it in a way to satisfy the current rules of engagement and make themselves look good in the U.S., but they have every plan to go back in through these dollar buyback programs that they've put into the contracts. Now, again, I don't know that that's true for all 600, but I do know some of the major players that have backed out have that in their contracts. Finally, the 5 canons of rhetoric, delivery, the practice of presenting the best thoughts. And I would say that this whole debacle is an example of poor delivery where the information was hidden from the American public. It was found out, and then it was shot down. The balloon was shot down after it crossed the entire United States. So, sometimes we do examples of good things that happen in the 15 tools of learning, and sometimes they can show us bad things. So I hope you enjoyed today's segment on our culture and current events and how to use the 15 tools of learning to dig deeper into what's really going on. One of the events I look forward to every year is the Classical Conversations National Conference. So if you're a member, listen up. You're invited to attend our 2023 National Conference on May 4th through 6th in Southern Pines, North Carolina. It's sponsored by our nonprofit, the Classical Conversations Foundation, and it is a time where families can get together and meet and fellowship, hear talks from leaders in the homeschooling movement, listen to a panel of Classical Conversations graduates about their homeschooling experience, and much more. We also have camps for your students at the nearby National Athletic Village, so registration is now open. So mark your calendars for May 4th through 6th and go to classicalconversationsfoundation.org/events to register today. That's classicalconversationsfoundation.org/events. We hope to see your family there.
Welcome to Classical Crypto with Will. Today we will be covering the SEC's recent attacks on crypto staking, on Kraken, and stablecoins in general. First, let's do a quick review on staking if you haven't heard my segment on that. Crypto staking is the act of holding a certain amount of cryptocurrency in a digital wallet or on a blockchain network in order to participate in the validation of transactions, and in return for that, you earn crypto rewards. This process is commonly used in proof of stake, blockchain networks, yada yada. We've covered a lot of it. But in basic terms, we can see it in light of traditional markets. All right, so in a traditional market, you trade your dollars for stock, right? You buy stock in a company. If that stock is a dividend, they'll send you dividend checks, and you're doing that in hopes that that company builds its products and services, and then at a later date, you sell it for hopefully a higher price, you get taxed on it, but you're earning more money, right? That's the basics of investing. So in crypto terms, staking is similar to that. You buy crypto, you stake it with that company or some other initiative. They're using that value for validation, or they're using that value to hire people, build products and services, and again, get crypto in return at different crypto interest rates, 6%, 15%. Sometimes they're very high in crypto, which is kind of cool. But in February of this year, the SEC started going after crypto staking, and specifically they're going after exchanges that offer staking. Now I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I don't see anything wrong with crypto staking. It's been around for a while. It generates innovation just like in traditional investing. It's been good for people. They're earning more crypto. It's been good for the companies for the most part. And my personal thought is that this is just traditional finance punching back at crypto because they're threatened. That's just my personal opinion. It could not be true, but it's the only thing that really makes sense to me. But anyways, on to the news. On February 9th, Kraken settled with the SEC. They have to pay the SEC $30 million because they've been staking. They released a statement that said they would be shutting down all of their staking endeavors, and other exchanges are probably preparing for war or shaking in their boots at this move. Now, right after the SEC settled with Kraken, they took aim at Binance's stablecoin. According to a Cointelegraph article entitled Why the SEC Wants to Ban Crypto Staking and Stablecoins, they said on February 13th, the SEC issued a Wells notice to Paxos, which is a trust company that issues Binance's stablecoin, and basically said that their stablecoin is unregistered security. On that same day, New York Department of Finance Services ordered Paxos to halt the issuance of BUSD, which is that stablecoin. That has led to various members of the crypto community taking to Twitter. Everyone's going crazy, going, man, what is going on? This makes no sense. These didn't have to be registered securities to begin with. Basically, it boils down to what I was saying, that it just appears that traditional finance is taking aim at crypto, whether it's jealousy, whether they're threatened. They're probably just trying to bring in more and more layers of regulation, which is probably going to boil down to a CBDC. I've also done an episode on that. You can go back and listen to that one. That's a central bank digital crypto. So they want to get rid of these stable coins because they're not theirs. I think the SEC, the federal government in the US, we're coming down to it. They're going to release a digital currency sooner or later, and this might just be a way to eliminate the competition. So I hope it's not as ominous as that, but nothing else truly makes sense at this point to me, and it's really interesting to see as this unfolds. So we'll see what happens, but do your research. You can research Binance, just type in Binance stablecoin and read about it, and I'll keep you updated on what's happening.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode with Dr. Murff as much as I did. It was great to hear how her community rallied around her. If she spoke to your heart today, be sure to share this episode with a friend, and make sure you subscribe, because next week we're having Ken Sandy on. So you won't want to miss that episode. See you then.
Thank you for listening to Refining Rhetoric with Robert Bortons. Want more? Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. You can also follow us on social media to continue the conversation, and visit classicalconversations.com/rhetoric to find out how you can join a local homeschool community.